Adam, serious stuff now. We are contractually obliged as part of the Talksport Fan Network to have at least 10 minutes of serious football chat. So if we
Okay.
can, gentlemen, tactical setup. What do you expect from City? How does City win the game at Wembley Stadium on Saturday?
So we had the conversation this week about Erling Haaland and is it less fluid with him and should you potentially not play him from the start because you got success with, playing Marmoush out wide and the four midfielders. I think that Haaland has to play. So I'll start from there. I think you can mirror the way you've had success in the last few weeks playing the unks and trying to get more control in midfield and still have a bit of bite in attack. The issue is how much of the control do you lose with Erling Haaland? So I'm pretty torn, to be honest, on how exactly Pep might set up from the midfield going forward. But one thing I think is certain is I think Nico O'Reilly and Mateus Nunes have to come back into the picture because that is where City had their width. That's where they were able to stretch the game in those games when you had the unks in the middle that were kind of mucking things up and trying to get the control. And I think in the last few games where we've gone back to seeing three center backs and we saw Rico Lewis out wide, that width just totally evaporated and you felt the fact that you had four midfielders on the pitch, whereas you didn't feel that quite as much when you got, a bit more pace and width from Nunes and O'Reilly out wide. So I'd like to see City go back to that. But then again, I think, Pep could be tempted by having a Kanji back in the picture, and he's a senior guy that's played in finals and made impacts in finals. But I think if you're trying to draw on what gave you, 7 wins in 8 or whatever in late March and April, it's getting Nico O'Reilly back out wide. It's getting Mateus Nunes back out wide, and that's where you can stretch the game to try and keep control in the middle, if that makes sense.
No, it certainly does, and I would be in agreement there. But Matt, it felt, or at least it's felt like to me, the maybe not the second half in the Wolves game because Nico O'Reilly certainly was struggling, but I did think the lineup, and I know we spoke about this earlier in the week, that Manuel Akanji coming into that lineup was possibly a nod to him having legs for this cup final. And
Yeah.
obviously, Nico O'Reilly played the semi final. He came off the bench to great effect against Forest in the quarter final. But I wonder if Guardiola is going to revert to type a little bit when it comes to naming his defence for a cup final because, well, twofold really. He wants the guys that have been there and done it before. Now, I will make the point for the Akanji detractors, and there are quite a few in big matches. Ironically, he has been known to have a blunder or two. Champions League final, for example, when he passes it backwards, and I think he was culpable for the Son chance in the
Yeah.
the key game, the penultimate game of the season last year.
He was also responsible for the one Pep Guardiola dropped to his knees in Istanbul. Was it
Yeah,
was it a bad
Yeah.
header backwards?
I
I
think it
think
was
that
a
played
pass to
played
Lautaro
Lautaro in.
Martinez.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, Matt, to sort of wind up that slightly elongated point, it feels like Guardiola's kind of wanting Manuel Akanji to be in there, which I don't know. Again, I can see both sides of the argument here.
Yeah. No, I can as well. I don't think one is more. There's there's good reasons for both. There's pros and cons for both. But I'm in agreement with Adam. I think Nunes and O'Reilly giving us that width. I think especially it's notable that Palace with their back five, they'll have their wing backs bombing on at every possible moment. And if we've got that width, it gives us every good chance to possibly, get the ball
Pin them
over,
back a bit.
make it
Yeah.
take advantage of that space that they're leaving in behind. Um, but at the same time, like you say, it's a final. Pep's probably is he gonna rely on like his main guys? It's very possible, and I think either way, I wouldn't be surprised. But personally, for me, with Nico especially, he's had a really good FA Cup this year. He popped up with a couple of goals in the early rounds. He's been really good, and that semi-final performance. Forget the Wolves game. He's been fantastic pretty much every time he's played, and I think that alone he deserves to start. Nunes as well. We could talk about Nunes for years, but what he does offer you them overlapping runs that you just don't get with Rico Lewis or Akanji or whoever's there. He offers something different, and I think in a final, you've just got to go for it. I understand you've got to be smart, but you've just got to go for it. You've got to play with freedom. Sorry, and just express themselves. And I think that's the best way we can do that, like we did against Forest. That's our blueprint. Let's just give it another shot.
I think interestingly for me, I actually think Mateus Nunes is the more important one to come in than Nico O'Reilly. I think
Yeah, I agree.
I would be fine with Akanji and Ruben Diaz starting together at center back because I mean Jasko Gvardiol has been arguably the standout player at left back for 2 seasons now, and even in City's darkest days this year, he was the standout out there on the left. So I think the difference between Nico O'Reilly playing out on the left and Gvardiol playing out on the left is minimal to none. In fact, Gvardiol may even be better there than Nico O'Reilly. They're different players for sure. But what I will say is on the right, Mateus Nunes to whoever your other option there is totally different, whether that's Rico Lewis, because you have to play a totally different way with Rico Lewis. He's not, as we saw over the weekend, he's not a player that is going to bomb up and down from right back. And even if his instruction is to play out wide on the right, it doesn't really work with Rico. You'd rather see him tuck inside and then maybe you get width from a winger over there. So for me, it's a lot more important that Mateus Nunes plays. If your back four is Nunes, Akanji, Diaz, Gvardiol, I'm more than happy with that. But if it's Rico on that side, then that is, for me, that requires systemic changes further up the pitch because you'd want Rico coming in centrally and not using him as, your width out on the right.
Yeah. The only way I can see Rico Lewis starting is similar to the semi-final. You know how he's kind of in that number 8, number 10 position. I don't even know what to call it, but only Pep knows. But that's how I can see him fitting in. But I don't know whether it's the romanticism side of things. I just can't help but see Kevin De Bruyne start with that armband on. And I think if he's there, I don't know. I just don't know where Rico fits in. If Gundogan's there, Bernardo's there, it might not be a game for Rico Lewis.
I think it's if I could have a genie and have one wish, I think it would make Nico O'Reilly right-footed. If you could play Nico O'Reilly out at right back, and everyone else falls into place, and you could be O'Reilly out on the right instead of Nunes or Rico Lewis, I think that would be. I mean, that's a back four you'd roll with for 3 to 4 years from now.
Is that a step too far, asking the 19-year-old centre attacking midfielder playing out of position at left back to then go and do it inverted on the right hand side?
Well, this is another universe where he's played this whole season on the right because he's now right-footed.
Yeah. At the opposite end of the pitch, Matt, you said earlier this week, a clip that was shared on City Ramble social media, that you don't want Erling Haaland to start the FA Cup final. Have you regressed on that point? Do you stand by it? Are you going to stick by your word? Are you going to make the case for a Manchester City starting 11 without what people would say, the best striker in the world? Even though I very much agree with you.
Yeah, listen, it's such a ridiculous thing to say, isn't it, that Erling Haaland shouldn't play a football game? But I just feel like the way, at our best recently, I know he's been injured, so he couldn't have played anyway, but it's been our best form this season. It's been without him, and I just feel like, why change that right now? Especially, it wasn't his fault that we drew to Southampton, but, why copy that lineup when we could go to how it was, with, I think as well, for me, you've got to have Marmoush starting. I think if he's the sacrificial lamb that means Haaland plays, then that's a no for me. But if you've got both of them in there, then hey, I ain't complaining. And I'm not the one getting paid to make the decisions like Pep. God, he's got some hard job. But if it was up to me, just as long as Marmoush is starting, I'm probably avoiding the question here, but as long as Marmoush is starting for me, I think I don't mind whether Haaland starts or not.
I do think they're a different prospect when it's Haaland and Marmoush. That certainly allows Erling Haaland to do more of what he's good at, and obviously Marmoush adds a different dimension. Adam, I assume you're going to be pro Erling Haaland?
Yeah, and I agree. Hold on. Fucking hell. Fucking Pacific Northwest allergies. Sorry. That's all staying in. Yeah, I agree with Matt that we said it earlier in the week that Haaland can give you more to his game when Marmoush is in there, because if Haaland eats up the attention of 3 defenders every time City go forward, then you have another killer on the pitch in Marmoush who can utilize the space that's left behind. But at the weekend at Southampton, when there was very little space to work with, and City essentially had no other threats on the pitch other than maybe Kevin De Bruyne if he was really on his day, then you have no trouble just like triple teaming Erling Haaland because Savio's not going to score a goal. Doku's probably not going to score a goal. McAtee's not going to score a goal. So I don't know exactly how you'd set it up because I think Pep is going to want at least 3 of his midfielders in there. So maybe they revert back to the old classic 4-3-3 that we saw for a number of years. And you've got like Kovacic, Bernardo, De Bruyne in the middle, and, you know, Marmoush and Haaland and somebody else up there, Foden or somebody, I don't really know. But I think Haaland has to play. He's the only player in the team other than De Bruyne on like free kicks that can give you something from nowhere. He needs just one attempt, and I think that's so important when we have the rest of the attacking, you know, the attacking force of Savio, Doku, Foden, Grealish. They need about 10 attempts, and Haaland needs one. And I think just City need that, especially in a cup final where chances may be scarce and there may be just one chance that falls to the feet of somebody late in the game, and that's you want Erling Haaland in that situation and nobody else.
Do you think, Adam, we're at risk of a Pep overthink in a final? Obviously, Glasner made those.
But what is a Pep overthink now?
What is a Pep overthink anymore? Who knows? Maybe playing Haaland is the overthink, but obviously, Glasner made those comments about saying that Guardiola can't play with this system again. I'll have something waiting for him. Haaland coming in on the basis of the evidence against Southampton would probably mean a system change because in that 4-2-2-2, it just wasn't working with Erling Haaland. It doesn't work, I would assume, again. So any chance we kind of see something funky?
I think there's a chance that City revert back to something we've seen earlier in the season, which would be De Bruyne as a number 10 and legit wingers. Like maybe there's a chance we see Savinho from the start. And because you have Erling Haaland back in the picture, you want the players that can give you maybe a little bit of better service than a McAtee or whoever else. So maybe we see like Savinho out on the wing. Also, very, very rogue shout for Jack Grealish. This is a game where Pep randomly throws Grealish in. We've seen it constantly where Grealish won't play for 6 weeks and then he'll start at the Bernabeu or he'll start in a FA Cup semifinal. So I genuinely think if we see Savinho and Jack Grealish as 2 wingers on Saturday, it wouldn't be a surprise.
Yeah. Matt, final sort of thing to wrap up before we finish with some FA Cup trivia. Obviously, I need to stop saying obviously. It can't be that obvious if we're speaking about it. But City have the Champions League qualification still to wrap up. A win against Southampton would have probably given them that buffer. Is there a chance, not necessarily in terms of Pep overthink, moreover, Pep prioritising Bournemouth and Fulham, that we see a more rotated lineup? I don't know. I would first of all be furious because it's a cup final, but secondly, I would be very shocked because it's a cup final.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's very possible. It's very possible, but the fact that we're that torn on the starting 11, I think it's hard to say what is the rotated side and what isn't at the moment. Do you know what I mean? So I think either you split 2 11s. I think there should be informed players in both 11s there, really. Don't get me wrong, if it's a mishmash team on Saturday and then Bournemouth, it is all your big boys, that'll be disappointing. But if we get the job done, I don't mind who plays because, listen, the semi-final, we saw Rico Lewis starting in midfield.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone was filled with confidence seeing that. And, you know, we go and win the game, he scores in the first minute. So that's the magical thing about the cup. Anyone could be the hero. So we'll see how it goes. But, yeah, I would be disappointed if Pep's prioritising the league game, and I really wouldn't be surprised if he is, to be honest. Because, listen, beating Southampton, it would be as good as wrapped up by now, wouldn't it? And as we spoke earlier in the week, we're in this position now where we've got to win these 2 games, really.
That was the first part of the show. If you want more, make sure to check the City Ramble wherever you get your podcasts from.